Good evening and welcome to Wisdom Wednesday. My name is Naomi, the How To Chick. If this is your first time catching one of my lives, it should not be. But if it is, my name is Naomi. I'm a child of God, a wife, a mom, an attorney, a coach, a mentor, and a speaker. But most importantly, I believe you can do anything, but not everything. And you have to choose wisely. This week, I had an interesting discussion with one of my clients, and I wanted to talk a little bit about something that I learned when I was 21 or 22. I've told you guys before that I had a year in which I decided that I was going to date broadly. This was an experiment for me because I don't like people. I don't like a lot of people. I'm extremely introverted and I hated dating, but I enjoy being in a relationship, right? So I wanted to find a good person. And so I went on a series of first dates. Actually, I've told you guys before. I went on 51 first dates. And this week I was working with a client who was giving me this story about a relationship that she'd been in where she made a series of compromises that cost her peace, her financial security, and almost her relationship with her children. And so tonight I wanted to talk to you on the topic, believe him the first time. It's a Maya Angelou quote. It's very clear, but sometimes we miss the signs, not because we want to, not because we are trying to, not because we are deliberately deceiving ourselves, but because we have been taught through patterns and practice, through justifications that we've seen our grandmothers and our mothers and our aunts and our cousins and our friends do, that it's okay, right, to create a narrative. And so I'm coming to you tonight on the topic, believe him the first time. Maya Angelou says, when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. But she also has a quote that I love. I actually have this one framed in my office, and it says this: you can forget what someone says. You may even forget what they do, but you will never forget the way they make you feel. And this week, I want to give you a valuable tool. If you are single, if you are divorced, if you are dating, if you are looking, if you are hoping to get into a relationship with someone that will help you sift and weed through the weeds, the poo, the turds quickly. There's a painful skill that many women they lack, and they in many cases learn it way too late. They learn it after bitterness has hardened their hearts, and they don't have the capacity to give love, to give dating, to give relationships another try. And it's simply this: when a man shows you through his patterns, through what he does, through how he shows up, who he is, believe that version of him, not his words. Believe him the first time, not the fifth time, not the 35th time, not the 3,517th time, not after your friends and family and relatives warn you, not after you start losing friendships, not after your peace is gone, not after you have spent months or even years or decades trying to decode mixed signals that were never actually mixed. Believe him the first time. Sorry, I'm hearing noises. A lot of women aren't confused because the signs aren't clear. When I was talking to my client this week, there's a point in a movie, right, where especially mystery or suspense movies where you've been watching and you've wondered who the killer was, who done it, who the bad guy is, who the crooked person is inside the police force. You're trying to figure out what happened, but there's a point where one thing happens and suddenly all the little clues, the Easter eggs just kind of come together. And I am encouraging you to initiate a protocol that I talk to my daughters about, that I myself learned in my early 20s, that saved me so much time and heartache to be able to see those clues in the beginning. What happens is that we're not actually confused about the signs. We're confused because we have been taught to make excuses for what people do and to read. Have you ever heard the term rose-colored glasses? To read people's actions, specifically men's, through a lens of expectation and potential. I need you to take this word and cross it off of your list. If you have a list, if you are over 18, right? And you have a list of things that you desire in a man and potential is on that list, cross it off. It is important for you to recognize that a small gesture is not a story of who a man is. Consistency is that story. Inconsistency does not signal that he is in a difficult place. It does not signal that he's complex or busy. It signals a lack of interest. Distance is not him being afraid of commitment. It's him being unwilling to commit to you, to me. And neglect is not a sign, right, that you need to try harder. Many of us have created these narratives in our heads that keep us attached to, and I talked about anxious and avoidant attachment. If I need to get into that again, I will. But many of us create narratives in our heads of what we wish and hope people say and respond to that instead of responding to what was actually said and what was actually done. So today I want to give you 3 simple points. I worked through this, like I said, with my client, and it took me back to when I was working through these issues on my own in therapy. So point 1, an action is not evidence of what a man, excuse me, I'm sorry, I have indigestion. An action is not evidence of what a man intends to do. His action is the evidence of who he is. And I need you to take that. I need you to write it down. What he does is what he intended. If he says he wants a relationship, if he says he cares for you, if he says he's serious, but then on the other side of his mouth, he's not responding to texts. He's too busy to go out. The only time he's calling is late at night. He says he's healing and he needs time to be ready for the relationship that he's telling you that he's ready for. He's never felt this way and he's love bombing you, but he's never physically with you. It's time to evaluate the actions. These are some things I looked for. Does he pursue with consistency? Does he communicate with clarity? Does he follow through and show up to do what he says he will do? Does he create safety and peace for you? Or are you always in suspense, wondering, guessing, right? What he's going to do next? What cockamamie story he's going to come up with? What's going to happen to his car? What he's going to need money for? What he's going to essentially shift the burden to you to create a narrative to explain away your own disappointment on. Actions aren't footnotes to take into account when evaluating what he says. Actions are the only thing you should be evaluating. What he says should be the footnotes to that, right? Words can be aspirational. Words can be emotional. Words can be manipulative. Men can sometimes mean words with true sincerity in the moment, but have the lack of capacity, the lack of discipline, the lack of character, and the lack of intention to ever follow through. But his behavior, what he does, it tells the truth. Behaviors are consistent. And I'm not talking about the love bombing, the taking you on wonderful dates, the spending time like you've never seen before in your life one time, while every other pattern is inconsistent. Every other pattern is a pattern of disrespect, and every other pattern leaves you guessing where you stand with him. If you ever have to say, well, maybe he meant, I need you to reevaluate that and say, no. What he meant was what his actions showed very clearly and what his choices and decisions have been saying all along. And I need to say this very clearly because this is where women lose years, because men can sense when you're starting to get clear on where they are, and then they begin the love bombing. You cannot look prospectively at his actions. You need to look at his actions as they have been consistent before you got fed up. Before you got angry and went off, before he lost temporary access to you and straightened up and flew right for a few weeks. right? Because what happens is you get into this push pull dance where you're waiting for some dramatic moment when he's finally going to be ready, when he's finally going to be consistent, when he's finally going to show up in action and indeed the way that he has in word. And I need you to understand confusion is information, inconsistency is information, evasion is information, delay without direction is information. Stop waiting. Stop waiting. The pattern of his actions tells you exactly where you stand with him. To please stop filling in the gaps with emotional fiction. I'm so sorry, guys. I have the worst indigestion. Sometimes women aren't just responding to men, they're responding to the stories that they create about them. He doesn't call, and suddenly the story is, I know he told me he was stressed at work. He must be overwhelmed. He must have to work late. He pulls away, right? He doesn't respond to text for a few days. He becomes evasive. The story in your mind becomes, oh, wow, he told me that he was badly wounded in his last relationship. He must be afraid because I mean so much to him. He's breadcrumbing you, right? He's giving you a little bit, but never exactly what you have expressed that you need, and never enough to make it worth saying that you are in a relationship. And in truth, you know you're in a situationship. And then you tell yourself the story. He wants to do more, but life is so hard right now. The divorce ate him up. He's trying to maintain a relationship with his children. You're creating the story, not him. Think about it. Last one, he doesn't make any effort. And instead of admitting that this shows a lack of investment, you say he just needs someone who will believe in him. And so you start investing to try to build a bear. I said build a bear, I meant build a man, but same difference. You're investing to try to help him get into a better career. You're spending your time and energy to get him a better job. You're upgrading his wardrobe out of your funds. You're signing him up for career coaching. You're co-signing on a vehicle for him. This is how women talk themselves out of reality and tie themselves into a long-term situation that should never have even been a temporary situationship. It's not because you're foolish. You were never foolish. You were hopeful. You're compassionate. You're kind. And I tell my children all the time, if someone wrongs you, look for the best possible reason that they did it, because most people are really only interested in themselves and their own narrative. And that is a wonderful way to be when you're dealing with people. It is a terrible way to evaluate a relationship. Depth, empathy, and imagination are necessary parts of human interaction. But when you take those undisciplined and apply them in a situation where they can cloud your judgment, it becomes a liability. When you're a nurturing person, you can turn a red flag into a prayer point. When you're lonely enough, you can turn any inconsistency into a love story. And when you've been wounded, been abandoned, never seen consistency in a relationship, you can mistake the emotional labor that you're doing, it's one-sided, for intimacy. If you have unchecked expectation in new relationships such that you are unable to see clearly, you begin relating to the man that you are dating as who you want him to be, not who he is. Guys, this indigestion is trying to take me out tonight, so I apologize. I might have to record this one again, because when I was going through this with my client and when we were creating, some points and some tools to help evaluate, these 3 points stuck out to me. But I want you to understand that you cannot build a man with a projected view of who you want him to be. You can't commit to someone's potential without evaluating who they are and how they're showing up. What destroys your peace is not what happened. It's what you allowed yourself to believe while it was happening. And this is the reason why many women come out of relationships with extreme shame, extreme guilt, Because the moment when everything coalesces, when you're able to see the patterns, you start to feel as though you were dumb and you did something wrong. And the truth is, you didn't. You used every tool and every resource that we have been given to live in relationship with people, and you applied it to a person who was not worthy. We cannot make excuses and build narratives around people's behavior. Evaluate the behavior in black and white in the beginnings of I don't want to say in the beginnings, and I'll get into that later. But for this woman, she could see that she had known within a month of meeting him that it was not an ideal situation, and yet they were together for years. And so the plain truth is much simpler to deal with than complicated emotional fallacies made up so that you're able to justify the emotional labor that you're putting into a Build-A-Man. Painful clarity must be better than a comforting delusion. Why? Because otherwise you waste your time and your energy. And there are too many mid 40s, mid 50s, mid 60s women running around after leaving a Build-A-Bear after 7 years, 10 years, 15 years, who are angry and bitter, blaming themselves, when in truth, that man did lie. That man did manipulate you. That man did sit back and let you pay all the bills. Yeah, you did it, but there was equal blame on both sides. You have to forgive them and forgive yourself. Move on. If you were married, hopefully you get something out of it, out of the divorce. But you also have to leave the bitterness and get tools for evaluating new relationships. Otherwise, there are people who are existing in solitude by design. They've chosen to be alone, and they've chosen to be alone not because they desire to be alone, but because they're so wounded, they're so hurt, they're so angry, they're so bitter, and they're holding on so deeply to what the last relationship did to them that they've never evaluated their role in it, and they've never thought about how they could get effective tools to evaluate the next relationship. So the last point is expectations have to submit to evidence. Expectations have to submit to evidence. When my husband and I first started dating, I made close to twice what he made. And I wasn't a gold digger. I wasn't a person who was that much concerned about it. And I was not looking, right, for someone to pay all my bills, but I was looking for someone who I could build with. And so expectations are powerful. Expectations shape what we notice. There is something fundamentally flawed in a society where 20-year-olds are expecting a man to pick them up in a brand new car and take them out on a $600 date when they've known them for 3 days. What I noticed was the way that my husband made an effort to come up with unique, low cost, extremely enjoyable and romantic experiences that we could have together. Picnics, walks in parks that were so close to my home and I'd never been in, all of the museums and things that I could love. And when he knew I loved something, I loved the symphony, absolutely adore it, he would splurge. He would take his time and get tickets to the things that I love to do. And I wasn't counting his pockets, so I don't know how much he spent on me. But despite the income disparity, he visited me as much or more than I visited him. And there were times where I wanted to go out and I wanted to do something that I knew I didn't have to count his pockets, but I knew that was not in his budget. If I asked, I paid. So if you expect, I'm sorry. This indigestion is taking me out. If you expect from a man that he will only show up in such and such a way, and that way is based on the 20% of things that you truly desire in a man. For me, that was values, conversation, consistency, reliability, character, discipline, compatibility. Those were in my 20%. So my expectations were all there. If your expectations are all based around the 80%, he's got to be 6'2" and a baller. He's got to have a car that's a 2023 or higher. He's got to drive a Mercedes or a BMW or, a Tesla. Like, you have a list. If your expectations for a relationship are around those types of things, then what ends up happening is when you inevitably meet men that don't meet those expectations, you already feel like you've lowered your expectations. And so you have already started filling in the gaps and providing a narrative for this man. So if you expect that your love will make a man be more clear and upfront with you, you're going to overlook the fact that he's never been clear. He would say, "Oh, I really want to see you," but never actually ask you on a date. If you expect that your loyalty will eventually one day be rewarded, you're going to wake up one day and realize you've been emotionally starved in the relationship for years. If your expectation is that your patience, your understanding, and your support will change him, what you've done is confuse endurance with wisdom. Expectations are wise, but your expectation must be in the right thing. Your expectation needs to be for what that man can do and provide for you, not what he has, not what he can do financially. It has to be based on the things that you value. If you value honesty, loyalty, I'm telling you, the 20% values are what people are missing. And healing stops. Excuse me. This is terrible. Healing starts when you stop negotiating with reality. If a man is careless with your time and your intention, believe him. If he is selfish, doing things for himself that he is not doing for you or for others, believe him. Not taking care of his kids, believe him. If he's inconsistent, canceling at the last minute, not doing what he said he was going to do, and then, occasionally sprinkling in a little razzle dazzle here and there, believe him. He is not consistent. If he is intentional, if he is kind, if he is honorable, and if he is steady, believe that too. Discernment is not cynicism. We have to learn to agree with and see what's real. What does it mean to believe him the first time? It means you stop waiting for better words when the actions have already told you the truth of who he is. It means you stop romanticizing confusion and filling in the gaps with constructive narratives that keep you emotionally invested in what hasn't been earned. You let his patterns speak louder than his promises. I'm going to say that one more time. You let his patterns speak louder than his promises. And lastly, you stop allowing your expectation of who he could be if you just overrule the evidence of who he has been. And maybe most importantly, it means you trust you. You trust that feeling inside of you that lets you know that you are not safe, that you are not cherished, that you are not being treated the way that you want to be treated in the first place. Trust yourself enough to respond to what you see and what you experience and what you feel, not what you want, not what you hope, not the building fund that you're willing to put in to get him to where he needs to be, where he is. Every woman who has ever ignored a pattern in a man has come back to report the peace that has been lost in the process. Do not sacrifice your peace to preserve possibility and potential. It's not going to happen. Accepting the truth quickly protects your heart, preserves your time, your energy, and in many cases, your money. And it makes room for the man that is whole that is coming. Many of us have filled time because we were so afraid of being alone with a build-a-man that we missed the perfectly good man that was waiting. What I need you to do, write this down. Believe him the first time. All right, that's all I got for tonight. Remember, you can do anything, but you cannot do everything. Choose wisely and good night.